There were crazy scenes in the British Parliament this week as a Muslim politician stood up and defended cousin marriage. Look, before you judge him, maybe his cousins are really hot. This is Iqbal Mohammed, who claims cousin marriage could build family bonds. I mean, yeah, I guess pumping your own cousin is a kind of family bond. Is it the kind of family bond you want, though? And he also said cousin marriage would put families on a more secure financial foothold. Yeah, I guess it's cheaper to do your Christmas shopping when multiple members of your immediate family are the same person, and you won't need to spend so much money on a genealogy site building your family tree when your family tree is just a shrub, just three people pointing at each other like the Spider-Man meme. I'm going to show you why it's a terrible idea to marry your own cousin, and I'm going to explain why I fully support the right of these people to marry whoever their parents want them to marry, even though it's a terrible idea. First, let's hear from Mr. Mohammed.
There are documented health risks with first cousin marriage, and I agree this is an issue. This is an issue that needs greater awareness on. Virginity testing, forced marriages, and the freedom of women must be forced marriage must be prevented, and the freedom of women must be protected at all times. However, the way to redress this is not to empower the state to ban adults from marrying each other, not least because I don't think it would be effective or enforceable. Instead, the matter needs to be approached as a health awareness issue and a cultural issue where women are being forced against their will to undergo marriage. In doing so, it is important to recognise for many people this is a highly sensitive issue, and in discussing it, we should try to step into the shoes of those who perhaps are not from the same culture as ours, to better understand why the practice continues to be so widespread. An estimated 35 to 50% of all sub-Saharan African populations either prefer or accept cousin marriages, and it is extremely common in the Middle East and in South Asia. The reason the practice is so common is that ordinary people see family intermarriage overall as something that is very positive, something that helps build family bonds and helps put families on a more secure financial foothold.
If someone in the 70s had suggested that mass immigration would lead to politicians defending cousin marriage in Parliament, they'd have been decried as a paranoid racist. Look at Britain now. The statistics around this are insane. In Bradford, the rate of cousin marriage in British citizens of Pakistani origin is around 75%. That's more than in Pakistan itself, where it's only 65%. This map, by Professor Alan Bittles, an Australian expert in genomics, shows rates of cousin marriage around the world, and yet it pretty much looks like every map of every social problem ever. According to the Daily Mail, babies from cousin marriages have roughly double the chance of developing health problems including blindness, hearing loss, neonatal diabetes, blood disorders, limb malformations, low IQ, cleft palate, heart problems, cystic fibrosis, and even death. Death is a very bad health problem to develop as it's often fatal. The risk of issues is compounded with each generation of cousin marriage. If we look at how this can affect just one particular health issue, studies have shown that the prevalence of thalassemia in Pakistan is as high as 7% compared to a global average of 1%. Previous NHS reports in Bradford highlighted how nearly half of deaths in children aged below 1 in the city could be attributed to chromosomal, genetic and congenital anomalies, which are more common among babies born to cousins. Britain's woke health services previously downplayed the risk of cousin marriage by saying it's no different in terms of increased risk of genetic conditions in offspring to liberal white Brits choosing to have children over the age of 34. The NHS have a handy infographic showing how cousin marriage affects the rate of birth defects. Look at this, they've named them Ruby and Adam. Yeah, I really think that people marrying their cousins are going to be called Ruby and Adam. It's amazing that you can still get white people in adverts when it's something bad. Basically, two parents from the same bloodline are more likely to both have the same recessive gene for something bad. If they marry someone from the next village over, it'll stay recessive. But if they marry their own cousin, it's more likely to manifest itself. And any genetic traits will be hyper accentuated. Like the famous Habsburg jaw from a Renaissance era royal family that was the biggest indication of their cousin pumping. Speaking of royals, some would say that cousin marriage is just upholding a British tradition. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were first cousins. But that was 162 years ago, and people in the old days didn't know it was a bad idea. We've got science now. It didn't stop the usual online excusenicks making the point that European royal families used to have cousin marriage to keep their wealth and power in the family too. Yeah, but it's still a bad idea when royal families do it. I mean, I'd hate for our heads of state to have big jug ears or eyes that are too close together. I think when girls say they want to be a princess princess, they don't mean they want to be forced to marry their own cousin and have kids with webbed fingers. Funnily enough, I'm actually from the place where the bicycle was invented. Kirkpatrick Macmillan lived just down the road from me at Keir Mill in Scotland, and he invented a rudimentary bicycle that genuinely had a huge impact on the genetic health of the West, because we were suddenly able to leave the valley to find somebody to procreate with who wasn't our cousin. Although cyclists themselves have since rolled back the good work that Kirkpatrick Macmillan did in trying to get them laid by plastering themselves in lycra and developing horrific personalities, so now nobody wants their genetic material. But back in modern Britain, our healthcare system has even had to advertise for specialist midwives to crank these crazy flipper kids out of cousin vaginas. One such position is a close relative marriage neonatal nurse at Frimley Health NHS Foundation Trust in Slough. The job ad says the nurse will need to speak to cousin marriage families in a sensitive, culturally appropriate manner and provide non-judgmental, evidence-based information. Oh yeah, of course, the main thing is we've got to make sure we're culturally appropriate and non-judgmental while we're talking to people about their imported medieval rituals. The advert says that being fluent in Urdu is desirable. I mean, I guess if your IQ has been hammered by generations of cousin copulating, you can't be expected to learn English. But I can't help but feel that the third world isn't sending us their finest doctors and engineers. And we're all having to pay for it. Every time one of these cousin bangers pumps out a Cyclops potato with flippers, our socialised health service ensures that we have the pleasure of paying hand over fist to look after it. So no wonder former Conservative Minister Richard Holden put forward this proposal to outlaw cousin marriage. Speaking in Parliament, he mentioned the health risks and also pointed out that it can reinforce negative structures and control women. But Britain's ruling hard left Labour Party indicated they have no plans to ban marriages between first cousins. I guess they've already alienated these communities enough with their support for Israel. They can't also fiddle with their dating rituals. But I actually agree with Labour on this, and it's not just because the doom-mongering around rising sea levels might mean that webbed fingers will come in handy one day. Who are we to say who should marry who? Telling people not to pump their cousin is just Western cultural imperialism. If the parents want to make sure the herd of goats stays in the family, who are we to get involved? If we don't want these customs in Britain, then may I politely suggest that we stop importing people with these customs. And some people on both sides have warned that the West is heading for a civilizational showdown with Islamism, just as happened in formerly Christian countries in the Middle East such as Lebanon and Syria.
كل الناس مطلوب أن يكونوا مسلمين. عندنا 50 مليون مسلم في أوروبا. وهناك علامات أخرى تدل على أن الإسلام سيظهر الله في أوروبا بدون سيف، بدون بندقية، بدون 50 مليون مسلم في أوروبا بعد عشرات السنين سيحول أوروبا إلى قارة مسلمة.
Une cinquantaine de millions d'Europe, si vous voulez, donc des centaines d'années, l'Europe,
أوروبا الآن في ورطة وكذلك أمريكا.
Et ainsi de suite pour l'Amérique.
أما أن تقبل بأنها ستصبح مسلمة بمرور الزمن أو تعلن الحرب على المسلمين.
I think there's less chance of such a showdown if one side requires an NHS nurse to feed itself and has webbed hands so it can't get a finger through the trigger guard on an AK-47. With that in mind, it's worth remembering that inbreeding in the Habsburgs ended their empire. Anyway, thanks for listening. Please send this video to a Labour politician to lobby them to be less stupid, and you can buy me a raw milk eggnog on the link below. And if you want to support me making these videos and get exclusive content and be part of a nice community of the only sane people left in the West, then you can sign up to my Patreon. There's a link below. Okay, thanks for listening. I'll be Leo Kears. Bye. Bye-bye.